Most chosen ones are waiting for a sign. But what if the sign has been waiting for you? Pause and really sit with that question. For so long, you may have been looking outward for confirmation, a breakthrough, an opportunity, a voice from beyond, a moment so undeniable that it forces you into action. You've told yourself that when the timing is perfect, when circumstances align, when fear disappears, then you'll finally step forward. But what if the delay was never about timing? What if it was about recognition? You've always felt different. Even as a child, there was an awareness within you that didn't quite match the environment around you. You observed more than you spoke. You sensed tension others ignored. You felt drawn to depth while others were content with surface-level conversations. That difference wasn't something you could fully explain, so you carried it quietly. You've sensed there's more for your life. Not necessarily more in status or attention, but more in meaning, more in purpose, more in impact. There has always been a quiet whisper inside you that says, this isn't all there is. Even during ordinary routines, even while fulfilling responsibilities, something inside you has known that you are capable of stepping into something greater. Yet that knowing has often felt intangible, like standing at the edge of something you can't quite see. And still, you've been waiting for the right time, waiting for clarity, waiting for confidence, waiting for validation, waiting for the fear to dissolve completely before making a move. You've convinced yourself that destiny will announce itself loudly, that it will arrive with unmistakable signs and undeniable certainty. But destiny rarely enters like a storm. It rarely demands attention. More often, it waits for alignment. Destiny doesn't arrive as a dramatic event. It doesn't always begin with applause or recognition. It doesn't require a spotlight. It begins with a quiet decision. A decision that may not make sense to anyone else. A decision that feels small from the outside, but monumental within. It is the moment you stop negotiating with your own potential. The moment you choose growth over comfort. The moment you accept who you are without apology. It begins with a step that no one else sees. There is no audience when you decide to trust your intuition. There is no celebration when you release what no longer aligns. There is no headline when you choose discipline over distraction. These internal shifts are invisible to the world, but they are powerful. They shift your direction long before anyone notices movement. Today, we're going to talk about the first step every chosen one must take before destiny can unfold. Not the glamorous step, not the visible breakthrough, but the foundational one. The internal shift that activates everything else. The decision that separates wishing from becoming. And once you understand this step, you'll realize you've been closer to your destiny than you ever imagined. You may even recognize that you've already felt the pull, that the hesitation you've experienced wasn't a lack of readiness, but a signal that something deeper was asking for your attention. If this message resonates with you, like this video, share it with another chosen one, and subscribe to this channel for more messages meant to guide your path. Before destiny ever manifests externally, it must stabilize internally. You cannot step into destiny while doubting who you are. You cannot carry purpose confidently if you are still negotiating your identity in private. Destiny requires alignment, and alignment begins with self-recognition. The world can open doors for you, but if you are unsure of yourself, you will hesitate at the threshold. The first step is not external action. It is not launching something. It is not announcing something. It is not proving something. The first step is internal clarity. It is the moment you stop asking the world for permission to be who you already are. It is the moment you decide that your depth is not excessive, your awareness is not strange, and your difference is not a liability. It is self-acceptance. That phrase may sound simple, but for a chosen one, it is often the most difficult milestone. Because self-acceptance requires confronting every moment you minimized yourself to stay comfortable in environments that could not hold your full presence. It requires remembering how many times you adjusted your tone, reduced your intensity, softened your truth, or silenced your intuition just to avoid friction. Many chosen ones minimize themselves without realizing it, not because they lack strength, but because they learned early that being fully expressed often created tension. Perhaps when you spoke honestly, it made others uncomfortable. Perhaps when you stood firm in your values, it isolated you. Perhaps when you showed confidence, it was interpreted as arrogance. Over time, subtle conditioning teaches you to dim slightly, to become more digestible, more agreeable, more manageable. They fear being misunderstood, and that fear is not irrational. You have been misunderstood before. Your silence has been misread as indifference. Your boundaries have been labelled as coldness. Your ambition has been interpreted as superiority. Being misunderstood repeatedly can create a quiet hesitation. It makes you cautious. It makes you selective. It makes you consider whether being fully seen is worth the potential rejection. So you try to blend in. You study the room before speaking. You measure your words. You adapt to the emotional temperature of others. You shrink your vision to match the expectations around you. Blending in feels safer than standing out. It reduces conflict. It reduces attention. It reduces scrutiny. But it also reduces authenticity. Blending in may protect you temporarily, but it disconnects you from destiny. Because destiny is not designed for a diluted version of you. It is aligned with your original blueprint. If you keep presenting a smaller version of yourself, you will continue attracting spaces that only accommodate that smaller version. The environments you enter reflect the identity you project. This is where the shift begins. The first step toward destiny is no longer apologizing for who you are. Read that again slowly. No longer apologizing. Not verbally apologizing, but energetically apologizing. Not shrinking your ideas before they are even challenged. Not softening your confidence to avoid triggering insecurity. Not hiding your growth to maintain old dynamics. When you stop apologizing for your existence, your energy changes. Identity determines trajectory. If you see yourself as uncertain, you will hesitate. If you see yourself as unworthy, you will settle. If you see yourself as too much, you will compress. But if you see yourself as intentional, aware, and evolving, your decisions begin to reflect that perception. Destiny cannot align with a distorted self-image. It responds to clarity. There is also a deeper layer here. Self-acceptance does not mean believing you are flawless. It means acknowledging both your strengths and your growth areas without self-rejection. It means understanding that your intensity is not aggression, your sensitivity is not weakness, your introspection is not overthinking. These qualities, when balanced, are tools. They are part of your design. Think about how often you have second-guessed your instincts, how often you felt something was off but ignored it to maintain peace, how often you wanted to speak but chose silence to avoid confrontation. Those moments may seem small, but they accumulate. Each time you override your inner voice, you distance yourself slightly from your authentic path. Destiny requires congruence. It requires your internal voice and external behavior to align. When you stop shrinking to fit the crowd, you begin separating from it. Not in arrogance, not in superiority, but in authenticity. Separation is not about isolation. It is about differentiation. It is about recognizing that your path will not mirror everyone else's, and that is not a flaw. Separation often feels uncomfortable at first. When you begin standing in your truth, some dynamics shift. People who are comfortable with your smaller version may resist your expansion. Conversations change, expectations adjust. You may feel a temporary sense of distance, but that distance is space, and space is necessary for growth. Identity also shapes opportunity. When you accept who you are, you naturally gravitate toward environments that match your authenticity. You no longer chase validation in rooms that require performance. You begin attracting spaces where your depth is appreciated rather than tolerated. But this shift only occurs when your self-perception stabilizes. Many people want destiny without transformation. They want elevation without introspection. They want visibility without identity. But elevation amplifies identity. If you step into influence while doubting yourself, that doubt will magnify. If you step into opportunity while hiding parts of yourself, that hiding will intensify. That is why destiny begins internally. Ask yourself honestly, where are you still minimizing? Where are you still adjusting excessively? Where are you still pretending not to care as deeply as you do? These are not accusations, they are invitations. Invitations to realign, invitations to stand more fully in your presence. You were not designed to be universally understood. You were designed to be authentic. Understanding comes from alignment, not from dilution. The moment you release the need to be accepted by everyone, you become magnetic to the right ones. That magnetism is a byproduct of identity clarity. Self-acceptance also builds resilience. When criticism arises, it does not destabilize you completely because you know who you are. When misunderstanding occurs, it does not redefine you because you are grounded internally. Identity becomes anchor. Without it, external reactions control your emotional state. With it, you remain steady. Destiny is not waiting for you to become someone else. It is waiting for you to fully inhabit who you already are. The hesitation you have felt may not be fear of action. It may be fear of visibility. Because once you stop shrinking, you become more noticeable. And visibility requires confidence in identity. But remember this: you have already endured misunderstanding. You have already navigated discomfort. You have already survived being different. The difference now is that you are choosing it consciously instead of unconsciously suppressing it. When you stop shrinking to fit the crowd, you begin separating from it. That separation is the first movement toward destiny, not because you are leaving people behind, but because you are stepping forward authentically. You are no longer contorting yourself to fit spaces that cannot hold your growth. Identity is the foundation. Without it, destiny feels distant. With it, destiny feels inevitable. The first step is not dramatic, it is quiet. It is the moment you decide that your authenticity is not negotiable. The moment you refuse to apologize for your depth. The moment you accept that being different is not a mistake. That moment shifts everything. Once identity begins to solidify, separation follows naturally. Not because you force it, not because you suddenly decide to walk away from everything familiar, but because clarity changes compatibility. Destiny often begins with separation, and this is the part many chosen ones misunderstand. When you start accepting who you are, certain relationships begin to shift. Conversations that once felt effortless now feel strained. Humor that once entertained you now feels shallow. Dynamics that once seemed normal now feel imbalanced. You are not trying to distance yourself, you are simply noticing what no longer aligns. Relationships shift because you are shifting. Growth is not silent in its effects. It alters energy. It adjusts tolerance levels. It redefines what feels nourishing versus what feels draining. When you begin valuing authenticity more than approval, you stop participating in interactions that require you to perform. That change alone can disrupt long-standing patterns. Old environments begin to feel unfamiliar. Places you once fit into comfortably now feel tight. The same routines feel repetitive. The same discussions feel circular. You may look around and wonder why everything feels slightly off, even though nothing externally appears to have changed. What has changed is your perception. When awareness expands, environments that once supported your previous identity can feel restrictive. You start craving depth over distraction, purpose over routine, meaning over maintenance. This does not make your past environments wrong. It simply means they were designed for a previous stage of your development. Separation is uncomfortable because familiarity creates security. Even if something is limiting, at least it is known. Growth introduces uncertainty. When relationships shift and environments feel unfamiliar, it can create doubt. You may question whether you are overthinking. You may wonder if you are being ungrateful. You may even try to reverse your growth to restore comfort. But this is where clarity is essential. Separation is not happening because you are superior. It is happening because you are evolving. Superiority isolates through ego. Evolution separates through alignment. There is a difference. When someone feels superior, they look down on others. When someone is evolving, they simply move forward. The intention matters. You are not distancing yourself to prove a point. You are adjusting because your internal standards have changed. Growth changes what you tolerate. It changes what you prioritize. It changes what you invest your time and energy into. And when those priorities shift, compatibility shifts with them. This does not mean you no longer care about people. It means you no longer compromise yourself to maintain dynamics that hinder your expansion. Before elevation, there is isolation. This line holds weight because isolation often feels like regression when it is actually preparation. When relationships shift and environments become unfamiliar, you may experience a season of being alone more often than usual. Invitations decrease, conversations become selective, your circle narrows. At first, this narrowing can feel like loss. It can feel like rejection. It can feel like abandonment. But isolation is not the absence of value, it is the presence of focus. When distractions decrease, clarity increases. When noise quiets, intuition becomes audible. Isolation creates the space necessary for refinement. Think of isolation as recalibration. When you step away from constant external influence, you begin hearing your own thoughts more clearly. You examine your patterns, you reassess your goals, you evaluate your boundaries. Without isolation, these adjustments are difficult because external voices constantly interfere. Isolation also tests your dependence on validation. When fewer people are affirming you, you are forced to affirm yourself. When fewer people are inviting you, you must become comfortable with your own company. This discomfort is not designed to weaken you. It is designed to strengthen your internal foundation. Isolation is not punishment, it is preparation. Preparation for what? Preparation for responsibility. Preparation for influence. Preparation for alignment. When elevation eventually occurs, it amplifies who you are. If you are internally unstable, elevation magnifies instability. If you are internally grounded, elevation magnifies stability. Isolation builds grounding. During isolation, you develop self-trust. You stop needing constant reassurance. You begin making decisions independently. You learn to rely on your discernment rather than consensus. These skills are essential for destiny because destiny often requires unpopular decisions. It requires confidence that does not collapse under external disagreement. Isolation also reveals who truly aligns with your growth. As your circle narrows, the relationships that remain are often deeper and more intentional. Surface-level connections may fade, but authentic connections strengthen. Quality replaces quantity. Depth replaces proximity. There is another layer to separation that many overlook. When you evolve, you unintentionally disrupt the expectations others have placed on you. People grow comfortable with a certain version of you. When you begin expressing a fuller version, it can challenge those expectations. Some may resist that change because it requires them to adjust as well. This resistance can create distance, not because conflict erupted, but because alignment shifted. You may notice that certain conversations no longer resonate. Certain shared habits no longer appeal to you. Certain shared complaints no longer interest you. Growth changes conversation topics. Growth changes emotional capacity. Separation is rarely dramatic. It is subtle. It unfolds gradually. One less shared interest. One more internal boundary. One more moment of choosing differently. Over time, these small adjustments create noticeable distance. But distance is not always negative. Sometimes distance is perspective. When you step back from old environments, you begin seeing them clearly. You recognize patterns you once normalized. You notice limitations you once accepted. That awareness empowers you to choose differently moving forward. It is important not to rush through isolation. Many chosen ones attempt to immediately fill the space with new connections to avoid discomfort. But the space itself is the teacher. The silence is instructive. The absence of distraction sharpens focus. Isolation allows integration. It gives you time to align internally before re-engaging externally. Elevation requires capacity. Capacity requires discipline. Discipline often develops in solitude. When no one is watching, you build habits. When no one is praising, you build consistency. When no one is validating, you build confidence. These traits form quietly in isolation. You may look around during this season and feel temporarily out of place. You may feel like you belong nowhere fully, not in your old environments, and not yet in your new ones. This in-between stage is transitional. It is the bridge between identity and destiny. The bridge can feel lonely because it is unfamiliar, but it is also sacred. It is where you solidify who you are without constant external reinforcement. It is where you detach from roles that no longer fit. It is where you practice standing alone, so that when you stand publicly, you do so steadily. Remember, separation is not a verdict on your worth. It is an indicator of movement. When you grow, friction occurs. When you evolve, alignment shifts. When you prepare for elevation, isolation often precedes it. Before elevation, there is isolation. Not because you are meant to remain alone, but because you are meant to become stable. Stability cannot be outsourced. It must be cultivated. Isolation gives you the environment to cultivate it. If you find yourself in a season where relationships feel different and environments feel unfamiliar, do not panic. Do not regress out of fear. Do not shrink to restore comfort. Recognize the pattern. Recognize the preparation. Isolation is not punishment. It is preparation. It is the quiet strengthening before visible movement. It is the unseen training before recognized influence. It is the refining process before elevation. And if you can endure this season without abandoning your growth, you will emerge with clarity, stability, and alignment that cannot be easily shaken. By the time identity stabilizes and separation begins, something deeper is already happening beneath the surface. This is where many chosen ones become confused, because they expect visible evidence that destiny has started. They look for movement, recognition, opportunity, confirmation. But the most powerful shift does not happen externally, it happens internally. The first step is unseen. No one applauds it, no one posts about it, no one may even notice it. From the outside, your life might look exactly the same. You may still wake up in the same environment, interact with the same people, handle the same responsibilities. But inside, something irreversible has shifted. And that shift is the true beginning. It is the moment you decide not to return to your old self. That decision is quiet, but it is monumental. It is not announced, it is not dramatic, it is a line drawn internally. A realization that you cannot unsee what you now understand. A recognition that shrinking no longer feels acceptable. A decision that even if growth feels uncomfortable, regression feels worse. There comes a point when the old patterns no longer satisfy you. The old coping mechanisms feel heavy. The old conversations feel empty. You may still have access to those behaviors, but something within you resists them. You become aware of the gap between who you were and who you are becoming. And once awareness solidifies, returning fully to the old version becomes nearly impossible. This is the internal step. It is when you choose alignment over familiarity, when you stop romanticizing your past limitations, when you stop excusing your own stagnation, when you recognize that comfort was keeping you contained. It is also when you begin trusting your intuition. For a long time, you may have second-guessed your inner voice. You may have overridden it to maintain peace. You may have dismissed it because it did not align with external advice. But once the internal step occurs, you begin listening differently. You start honoring subtle signals. You pay attention to unease instead of suppressing it. You act on clarity instead of waiting for consensus. Trusting your intuition is not impulsiveness, it is alignment. It is the understanding that your inner awareness has been trained through experience. It is the confidence that your discernment is not random. When you begin trusting yourself, hesitation decreases. You may still feel fear, but fear no longer controls your decisions. This internal shift creates subtle but powerful changes in behavior. You stop seeking constant validation. You no longer require approval to confirm your direction. Compliments are appreciated, but not necessary. Criticism is considered, but not defining. Your sense of worth becomes less dependent on external reaction. You stop announcing every move. You stop explaining yourself excessively. You begin moving quietly and confidently. You establish boundaries, not aggressively, not defensively, but firmly. You recognize where your energy is drained, and you adjust accordingly. You say no without lengthy justification. You limit exposure to environments that disrupt your growth. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. They protect your focus, they protect your clarity, they protect the version of yourself you are building. You prioritize growth over comfort. This is one of the clearest signs that the internal step has occurred. Comfort once dictated many of your choices. You stayed because it was easier. You delayed because it felt safer. You avoided because it reduced friction. But once the internal shift happens, growth becomes more important than ease. You choose the conversation that challenges you. You choose the discipline that stretches you. You choose the opportunity that scares you slightly because you know it expands you. Growth does not always feel good. It often feels uncertain, but it feels aligned. And alignment creates a deeper sense of peace than comfort ever could. What makes this stage difficult is that external evidence may lag behind internal transformation. You may feel changed inside, but your circumstances may not immediately reflect that change. This delay tests your consistency. It tests whether your growth is conditional or committed. If results do not appear quickly, will you revert, or will you remain steady? Destiny does not reward impulse, it responds to consistency. The internal step must be sustained long enough to reshape your external reality. Identity influences behavior, behavior influences environment, environment influences opportunity. But it all begins within. Many people confuse motion with progress. They believe that sending applications, starting projects, or making announcements automatically means destiny has begun. But without internal alignment, those actions often lead back to the same patterns. True progress is invisible at first. It restructures mindset before it restructures circumstances. When you stop returning to your old self, you interrupt cycles. You stop entertaining relationships that deplete you. You stop revisiting habits that slow you. You stop repeating conversations that diminish you. These changes may seem small, but they alter trajectory. Trajectory determines destination. The internal step is powerful because it reorients direction. Even if you are moving slowly, you are now moving differently. You are no longer walking in circles. You are no longer knocking on doors that were never meant to open for you. You are no longer trying to fit into spaces that require you to shrink. This leads to the realization that transforms everything. Destiny doesn't start when doors open. It starts when you stop knocking on the wrong ones. Doors opening is a result, not a beginning. The beginning is discernment. The beginning is restraint. The beginning is deciding that you will no longer chase what repeatedly rejects your authenticity. When you stop forcing alignment where there is none, you free yourself to recognize opportunities that truly match your evolution. Stopping the wrong pursuit creates space for the right one. It clears emotional clutter. It redirects energy. It restores focus. And in that clarity, intuition becomes sharper. You begin recognizing patterns earlier. You sense misalignment faster. You adjust sooner. The internal step also stabilizes your confidence. Not loud confidence, not performative confidence. Quiet certainty. You no longer feel the need to prove your growth. You simply embody it. And embodiment is magnetic. It draws aligned circumstances naturally because your behavior now reflects your standards. This stage is subtle, but it is sacred. It is where destiny quietly activates before it becomes visible. It is where preparation transitions into movement. It is where identity, separation, and alignment merge into momentum. You may not feel dramatically different, but your decisions are different. Your responses are different. Your tolerance is different. And over time, those differences compound. When the visible doors eventually open, they will not feel shocking. They will feel logical. They will feel earned. They will feel aligned, because you will know that the true beginning happened long before anyone noticed. It happened the moment you chose not to return to who you used to be. It happened the moment you trusted your inner voice. It happened the moment you stopped seeking validation and started honoring boundaries. It happened the moment growth became more important than comfort. That was the first step. And that step, though invisible, is the most powerful one you will ever take. As we bring this message to a close, take a moment to breathe and reflect on everything we've uncovered. Identity, separation, internal alignment. None of it is accidental. None of it is random. And most importantly, none of it means you are late. You are not delayed. It may have felt that way at times, watching others move ahead, seeing opportunities appear in other people's lives, wondering why your path seems slower, quieter, less visible. But delay and development are not the same thing. What feels like delay is often construction. Foundations are built underground before anything rises above the surface. Just because your progress has been internal does not mean it has been absent. You are not behind. Comparison creates distortion. It makes timelines look uniform when they are not. You are not meant to walk someone else's sequence. Your growth required certain lessons. Your awareness required certain seasons. Your strength required certain pressures. If you had stepped into visibility before identity stabilized, you might have collapsed under expectations. Being behind implies a race. Destiny is not a race, it is alignment. You are not forgotten. Even in isolation, even in quiet seasons, even when your efforts seem unseen, preparation often feels invisible. But invisibility does not equal insignificance. The work you have done internally matters. The boundaries you established matter. The habits you refined matter. The clarity you gained matters. Just because applause has not followed does not mean progress has not occurred. You are preparing. Preparation is not passive, it is intentional. It is the strengthening of character before responsibility increases. It is the sharpening of discernment before influence expands. It is the discipline built in private before opportunity becomes public. The internal step you took was not small, it was foundational. And foundations determine stability. The moment you choose alignment over approval, destiny begins. That moment may not have looked dramatic. It may have felt like a quiet shift in perspective, a refusal to compromise, a decision to trust yourself. But that decision altered your trajectory. Approval keeps you dependent. Alignment makes you independent. When you stopped asking who would accept you and started asking what aligns with you, everything changed. Alignment creates clarity. Clarity creates confidence. Confidence creates movement. And movement, sustained over time, creates destiny. Not destiny as spectacle, but destiny as fulfillment. The kind that feels steady rather than chaotic, intentional rather than accidental. Your first step was never meant to be loud. It was meant to be conscious. Loud steps attract attention. Conscious steps create transformation. You are not meant to announce your growth prematurely. You are meant to embody it. You are not meant to chase doors that were closed. You are meant to outgrow the need to knock. That awareness is powerful. It is mature. It is stabilizing. As you move forward from here, do not minimize the internal work you have done. Do not dismiss the separation you endured. Do not doubt the clarity you cultivated. These were not detours, they were direction. You are not waiting for destiny to begin. You are already walking within it. If this message spoke to your spirit, like this video, share it with someone walking their path, and subscribe to this channel so you never miss the messages meant for the chosen ones.